Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We're going to be talking about our experiences that we've had with our two classes. It's Year 4 cohorts and how we try to dissolve the screen to maintain engagement with them.
If you are part of the so the Microsoft Education Centre, you can actually redeem the code that's on the screen if you want to make a note of it, and we'll post it in the chat as well. And it logs your hours that you spent here, so like an hour, and it redeems some of like the pathways or courses that you might not have done. So that'd be really helpful if you are part of the MEC. So we're going to start with just sort of getting from you guys how things that you have experienced in online learning. So we sort of wanted to get from you guys if you've used any applications, how you felt that you tried to dissolve the screen and keep those pupil and teacher relationships strong. So we wanted to use a site called Mentimeter. So if you go to menti.com and you type in this code, and if I pop it on my screen, the code will still be there. And then you can type in some words and that will sort of help us get an overview of what you guys already know and what you wanted to get out of this workshop as well. Do you want to post it in the chat? And it will create like a word cloud. And I know that this has been used by teachers in our school during remote learning as well, to sort of get the kids involved, and it sort of allows everybody to contribute in one place. And you can just sort of put in words if you want, or maybe any applications that you use, if you use Teams or Google Classroom, or anything else that you found during your lockdown experience. Thank you. Oh, fab. Seesaw, that's one that we've heard a lot. Zoom. A lot of our experience, so we use Microsoft Teams, so a lot of our experience will be about that. Breakout rooms as well, we definitely use them a lot. OneNote is something as well that we try to use, part of the class notebook and assignments. I feel like the collaborative thing as well is something that we'll definitely talk about, because all the apps that we try to use are all about making involving the kids and they can work together. Oh. Flipgrid, yeah, that's definitely one that we've really enjoyed using. And I'll come back to this just in case anyone posts anything else. Yes, the whiteboard as well. Yes, so it seems like a lot of people have used Teams, which is good because that's what we've used as a school. But we do know that there is, you can use it with Google Classroom and Zoom as well, if that's the platform you're using. So I think we're going to talk about just a little bit about us, and Donna's going to explain.
Okay, so we're both Key Stage 2 teachers at Mowmacre Hill Primary, which is part of the Discovery Trust. Emma is an NQT, and it's been quite an NQT year for her. I'm more of an experienced teacher. I've been teaching for about 14 years. We're a city school in Leicester, just outside the city centre. We've got quite high deprivation in the area that we work in. So as a school, we've got about 40% pupil premium, got 30% EAL. Our cohort, it's 50-50 split almost of boys to girls, but we've got a significant number of pupil premium and EAL across the classes. One thing that we had to really think about and work on in this lockdown was that a lot of our children didn't have devices at home. So as a trust and as a school, we were really lucky that we were able to provide laptops to pretty much every family that needed them. And in some cases, we had to provide internet access as well. We also had quite low parental engagement. So it was really important that whatever we were delivering, we had to make sure that the children got their support from us. because a lot of the time they wouldn't be supported at home. Our school ethos is about making sure that all children, no matter what circumstances they come from or where they live, are given high expectations, that we encourage them, that we develop a passion for learning, and we've really tried to infuse that into our teaching.
Definitely. So in this workshop, we wanted to share our experiences through lockdown and how we dissolved the screen. And I feel like that's quite a buzzword at the minute. And we were all, I'm sure everybody here was sort of thrown into that online learning last term, and it felt a little bit different from last year. So we've interpreted, and we feel like a good interpretation of dissolving a screen is about trying to keep those relationships strong between you and your children in your class, and trying to keep things as similar as in-person teaching as possible, and adapting to the new normal and trying to make it so you are still, you still have a classroom and you are still teaching them, whether it's online or in person. We also want to explain some applications that we use in our online lessons to increase and then maintain engagement throughout all the weeks that we were online, and also how we're going to be using those in a blended learning approach moving forwards, especially now the children have learnt all those skills. We want to make sure that they are still using them and they're going forwards into they're, like we said, I'm sure everyone's heard, jobs that haven't even been created yet, they're going to be doing in 10, 15 years. So these skills aren't going to go away. And I think it's really important that we think about how we're going to keep those in the blended learning classroom environment.
So our experience, we are not experts. I'm definitely not. It's been a bit of a journey. And a lot of these apps, we either stumbled across them, or there was a couple that we had used in the classroom before, just trying them out. But we found a lot of them just by, following people on Twitter, or things popping up on Instagram or on our Google and things like that. We've used a range of different things. We've used things kind of to have fun quizzes, for quickfire questions and consolidating, as well as having some more normal school style lessons and just dropping things in, but we'll go more into that later. The children have really enjoyed it, which was nice to see, and I think we enjoyed it too, which helped. The kids really surprised us about how well they adapted online. One experience that we had before we went into lockdown with our classes was that there was a lot of them that weren't particularly techie. Some of them were really techie, and then some of them weren't, and it could be a bit of a struggle just logging in to the laptop itself. So it's been a journey for all of them, but they really surprised us actually, and they've done really well. They've not been overwhelmed by the experience, even the ones that weren't so techie. The one disadvantage that we have found throughout this lockdown, though, is that a lot of the applications that we were using, they're now requiring you to subscribe to them. Some of the subscriptions can be quite expensive, but a lot of them do offer free trials. So if there's anything that you really like, or there's a few of you that use in school, or that your blended learning champion, really promotes, then I know they do some pretty good discounts.
So before we sort of introduce the apps that we use, I thought it was really important to mention some of the pupil voice that we got from our students. So yeah, we're in year 4, and we just found that they were so positive about it, and the things that stuck out for them the most when they came back was, are we going to play that Kahoot quiz again, or are we going to be making our own PowerPoints? Can we be on the computer? And they seemed to really, really embrace it. And I think that was really important when we came back, to hold on to that enthusiasm that they had, to push forwards with our blended learning. And we tried to check in with them a lot and see, did you enjoy doing that? Was there something that you enjoyed more than others? A lot of the things that they picked out were those interactive apps like Kahoot, Pear Deck, quizzes, and Flipgrid, which we're going to talk about all of those today. And integrating these into our lessons made sure the children were engaged and participating within the first few minutes. And I think that was what made it fun for them as well, because they're at home on a computer screen on their own. It's nothing like being in the classroom. So I think these apps really helped them to create that new normal classroom environment. and it let them, I think it let us bring our personality a bit more to remote learning, and I think it helped them as well, to sort of feel like it was like the new normal. It was just the classroom, but online. The way that we planned our lessons and the way that we thought about putting these apps into our lessons, we tried to keep the structure of every day very similar. And I'm sure that everybody used timetables in different ways, but we found that having a timetable that was very similar to the classroom worked really well. And having it the same every day, the children really got to know the structure. And we sort of made our boundaries very clear, but very similar to the ones that we'd have in the classroom already. But just those things that they weren't used to, you know, having your camera on, muting your microphone, only using the chat bar for certain things. And I think that was really important to sort of train them into that new routine. But I think we found that using the same thing all the time was easier, simple, repetitive, and then they got used to it really quickly. And I think that was something that we could apply to the apps as well. That if we, you know, all of them really, you join in the same way. So as soon as you got them into that routine of this is how you do it, they could apply that really well.
So we were really lucky, I suppose, that we've got a few TAs in our year group. And depending on the timetable in school with key workers, we had times where we had our TAs and times where it was just myself and Emma. So it was really useful if you did have additional adults that they could be supporting you and having an active role online. And we found that just allocating a job to a particular person, such as monitoring the chat and liking some of the comments that they're putting in, and just general behaviour management, making sure that they're not being silly in the chat, was really, really helpful. We also changed our way of working after a few weeks. Once we found the breakout rooms and were able to set them up more seamlessly, it worked really well for us, and it gave us the chance to work with groups as you would in class, which was really, really nice, and that kind of helped to maintain that pupil-teacher relationship. But it also, as I said previously, because of our parental engagement, it took the onus off a lot of parents that were struggling. So even if we had children that didn't need help on their task, just having somebody there to chat to and just check in and say, could you check my work before I go, miss? That worked really well for us, and the children really enjoyed that, and they told us that they preferred that way of working. We also found that, as Emma's already said, getting the children online straight away, like we saw on the previous slide, and giving them a task to do straight away was really beneficial, because we tended to be working in much smaller chunks of teaching. Our lessons didn't tend to last more than 20-25 minutes, so that they weren't sat there, you know, getting bored, not listening anymore. So we made it short, bite-sized chunks, just getting the information in, making it fun and engaging, and then sending them off to their groups to carry on.
So we just wanted to clarify as well, so synchronous and non-synchronous lessons. So we found that we use a really, really good mix. Our synchronous lessons are those live lessons that we were teaching through Microsoft Teams. And then the asynchronous lessons were pre-recorded, or where the input was delivered by Oak Academy or White Rose, and I know a lot of people were using. We decided to teach maths and English live every single day, and then in the afternoons we would have guided reading and our foundation subjects pre-recorded. But we use these applications that we're going to go through with both styles of teaching. All of them offer the option for self-paced or homework style quizzes, which work well as formative assessment when you can't be there, when it's pre-recorded. We found that if children didn't have an individual device and they were sharing, those asynchronous lessons are so much better because they can do it at their own pace. But nothing could replace us being there live with them. But we found even maths and English, we were online from 9 in the morning till 12. And that's such a long time for them to be on screen, engaged, and participating the whole time.
So the asynchronous lessons really gave us some flexibility in the afternoons for those children that maybe have been overwhelmed, or those families that didn't have devices. And those asynchronous lessons, we're sort of building those into our teaching now in school, about how we could pre-record bits of input for children to go off and do the lesson on their own, and then us be able to work with children more one-to-one.
Cool. So we wanted to just go through some of the apps that have worked really well for us. These aren't all the ones that we've used, but these were some of our favourites. And I was wondering if you could just pop in the chat if you have used any of these apps. I know somebody put Flipgrid before, or if there's any apps that aren't on here that you have used that you think have worked really well for you. Keep my eyes on the chat. Kahoot, brilliant. That's one of our favourites. Okay, another Kahoot one. Oh, brilliant. Lots of Kahoot fans. That's one of our ones that we found even since being back just these few weeks. The children are always saying, oh, when are we doing another Kahoot? So it's definitely a popular one. Okay, so we've looked at quizzes, Kahoot, Flipgrid, I know somebody had mentioned before, Blockit, Pear Deck, and then MyOn. So let's have a bit more information about these. So Pear Deck, this is something that I stumbled across before we went into lockdown, and I had trialed it with my class as a way to try and engage some of the boys. And it works really nicely because the way it works is that you can make a lesson on PowerPoint as you normally would. And then at any stage of the lesson that you decide, there's special pair slides that the way that it works is that it's a slide that you add in at any point in your PowerPoint, and it can ask the children a question that they might have to type an answer to. And then they see all their answers popping up on the board written in, or they have ones that are drag and drop, which is brilliant for science or geography or maths. There's ones where you can put things in order, and it's really nice because they see that their answers are coming up in real time on the board. There's some really nice features that you can use so that it doesn't necessarily have their name there. You can delete any silly comments out that are coming. And if you're using another device at the same time, you can have a special teacher screen so you can see who's struggling, who's not engaging, which works really well. It's really easy to join because they ask the children to join by letters, which are displayed in a code, or you can embed your particular lesson as a tab in Microsoft Teams. I tended to use it in English because that was one of the ones that I was teaching live, but it could be used cross-curricular. It just depends how you want to use it, really. The children said that they found it really fun. I liked it because it was interactive and it gave you that in-the-moment assessment for learning. One of the tools that's really, really nice is if you use it regularly, you can come back and look at the data from the lesson, so you can start to see trends with any of your children and use it from there. So that was a really nice one. I'd say, oh, this is an example of how to join. The only downside I would say with that one is that you do get I think it's a 30-day free trial, and then you do have to subscribe.
It's on mute.
We didn't even know, neither of us noticed that. Thank you. So quizzes is really, really similar to Kahoot. So if you go, when you start your lesson, you can put all your PowerPoint slides into there, or you can create your own ones or discover ones that have already been pre-made. So they go, when you start it, it's just like Kahoot, you press start, you press host a live game, and then the children can go to joinmyquiz.com and type in the game code. You can also share them a link into Microsoft Teams. They can click straight on it, nothing to enter, which is really good for, I would say, Key Stage 1 or those children that might not be able to type it into Google to find it. One of the main advantages, I would say, of quizzes is the fact that you can enter so many different types of questions. So you can do multiple choice, you can have polls, you can have fill in the blanks, you can have ordering things, they can give their opinions on stuff. It really is, you can make it however you want. And I didn't use it much for maths and English, but I used it a lot for science. And I think it was just nice to make those subjects that if you're in the classroom, you know you'd be doing experiments, you know you'd be doing things that are interactive, just to make sure that those lessons really were engaging and interactive from the start. You can also set self-paced quizzes for homework, or if you want to set it for an asynchronous lesson, it's up to you. How you want to use it, but I think this was probably one of my favorites. I only really discovered quite late. I'll quickly show you as well. Once you log on, this is what it looks like, and if you can go on to Explore or My Library, and you get reports, very similar to Kahoot, and you can see how they've done afterwards, which is really, really nice. And it's very user-friendly, I think, to use. I've not found it too difficult to find my way around it. And the more you use it, the more the children will recognise the different types of questions and be able to answer them really easily. And this was one of the best ones, was when they could write their own answers, write your guesses for what you think this is. And it was lovely to be able to see their responses, very similar to Pear Deck, in real time.
Okay, so I won't need to talk too much about this one, I think, because most people are really familiar with this, but it's something that we'd already used again, only a couple of times before we went into lockdown. So the children were really familiar with it, and it's really easy to log in, which we all know. They just need the code, or if we were using it as we're doing now, we can share the link in the chat, which worked really well for some of the less techie children. There's loads and loads of pre-made Kahoots that you can go on, which is, you know, a good resource to start with, because then you can just edit them, or you can make your own Kahoots. There is obviously different versions of it. They've released another this week that I've noticed. There's a free version which worked fine for us for all of lockdown. I've recently subscribed to the premium version, but there is now a school version that has even more features for different types of questions and word clouds, things like that. One thing that we really liked with Kahoot is that you can just use it as a quiz, or you can import PowerPoint slides into it, so you can make it more like a lesson and then just add in the odd slide if you want to, rather than having a full quiz. One thing that I really like about it is that you can embed videos, or you can embed audio in, so they can watch a 1-minute video clip and then have to answer a question about it, to just break up that type of learning that you're providing. And then one thing that was really good was that you can make it really high stakes and have those points and make it really competitive. You can add the double points, which gets them in a right frenzy, because it can change the leaderboard, or you can take those stakes away and just have no points at all, which also works really nicely. And then, as Emma's mentioned before, we can set it as self-paced, have that asynchronous. We've done that today, actually. It worked really nicely in our grammar lesson, just so they're not always having to compete against each other, because I know that style's not for everybody. And then one of the other really good features is that you can download the reports of each Kahoot, and it will tell you which child has struggled, if there's any particular questions that majority of them struggled with. There's a feature that you can also, if it's, I think it's on the premium now, that you can, on a self-paced Kahoot, if there's a particular question that child has struggled with, they will drop it in again later as they're moving through the questions to see if they then get it correct again. This is just some examples of how we personalised it a little bit more. So that's my Bitmoji, so that they recognise myself or Emma's made the Kahoot, and it just makes it a bit more user-friendly for them, I guess.
Another one that I have found, really, this is a very new app. I think only January this year they'd released it fully for people to use, and it's Blockit or Bluekit. I think I've heard it pronounced either way, and it's very similar. Again, it's very similar to Kahoot, but I found that the games that you can do in this, so once you've set up your quiz, very similar to Kahoot, there's lots of different games that you can play with them. So again, it's a game-based learning platform, and you make your own quizzes, or that I found there are absolutely loads of pre-made ones, and they join a live game exactly the same as you would in Kahoot. But the different game modes that you can play are very exciting, and they have caused a lot of chaos, but they are really fun. And one of the advantages are you can set a time limit. So for example, if you wanted to use it for multiplication tables, you could set all 12 multiplication tables. So you'll have over 100 questions, but you're only going to play for 7 minutes. So in that 7 minutes, they have to answer as many questions as they can. In the game mode that's called Gold Rush, they earn gold every time they get something right, but also they get to steal gold, and they might lose gold. So it motivates them to get as much as they can right, and just to keep playing. And if they get it wrong, they get it wrong. Nothing happens. They can just keep going, and it does positively reward all the things that they're getting right. So we've used it for multiplication facts at the moment, but we played it for 5 minutes yesterday, and they over 1,000 questions were answered by 25 children or 23 children. So you can see how many, how rapidly they were getting through them, and it was very exciting. They've absolutely loved it, and this has become a new favourite. But again, if you've got the devices, if you've got everyone's got an iPad, it's a really, really fun way that they can practice their multiplication, or if you wanted them, I know that there's lots of phonics games as well. So again, that's another Key Stage 1 application. Just ways that you can, that rapid recall, I think, is probably one of the best things it can be used for, because it really does promote children to be fast, to be competitive, but it does positively reward them. And so if they're getting it wrong, it doesn't penalise them for it. And I think that's it does build resilience, I think. So this is definitely becoming quite a favourite, I think. There are no time limits either on the questions. You can remove them, which again is great because it's low stakes to assess them. They don't feel the pressure to get it done really, really quickly, especially if those children that will struggle, but they can still participate in that really fun game with everybody else in their class. So another one that we wanted to talk about was Flipgrid, and this is quite different to the ones we spoke about before. So Flipgrid, children can create videos on Flipgrid. We create topics as the teachers, and they create little videos in response to the topic that you set. So they can add filters, they can add emojis, they can add text, they can add captions to the video. There are loads and loads of things that they can do, and it's so user-friendly and so child-friendly. We found that we didn't even have to explain those things to them. They were able to find that in Key Stage 2, across Key Stage 2, they've been able to figure it out on their own, and do things that we might not think about as adults. But the way that they've decided to personalise their video has been lovely. We've used it for explanations of concepts. For example, when we did teeth and the esophagus, they'd make videos explaining what they'd learned in the lesson. Performance of writing as well was a really good one. Reading out their poetry, getting to add that expression that you don't get on the paper. Another way that we haven't used it for, but we thought would be a really good application, is reading aloud. If they made a video of themselves reading a piece of text to show that fluency, then they could do that. we tried to, a way that we really tried to dissolve the screen was to do things that we would do in class, for example, show and tell. And we thought that was lovely. And from the second week of remote learning, to be able to see their faces and actually see them in their homes with something that they bring into school, they'd be really excited to show you. That was really nice. And you can have those topics open throughout, you know, for weeks on end. So every week they could add another video. On Pancake Day, we did a pancake flipping competition. Again, it was just really nice to be able to have those fun moments that you'd have in the classroom, but sort of got taken away when you're on the screen. So we felt that this was an amazing app for dissolving the screen and keeping those relationships. You can join with Google or Microsoft. So if you are using Google Classroom, they can join with their Google account or with Microsoft. You send them a link straight to the topic. So once they click on the link, join with Microsoft, then they're on there. You can also give them a QR code as well. And then once the video is posted, you can see who's viewed it. They can like it, but we took that option off. And you can add comments as well. But again, you can add moderation on there. If you don't want children to be able to comment on each other's videos, you can take that off. You can monitor it just to make sure that it is being used appropriately. There's also an audio only option, which was really, we felt quite important for those children that didn't want to record themselves and wouldn't feel comfortable. You can do an audio only and they can still add some nice effects. So we found that Flipgrid is something that we would love to use, again, as soon as children have headsets. But again, if they were in groups and you've got iPads, I think it would be a fantastic way of promoting more oracy in the classroom. And I think this is our last one. The last app that we're going to talk about is MyOn. So MyOn is part of the Renaissance Accelerated Reader program. So it's a digital library, of books, and it's linked to Accelerated Reader. So you can assign children their books individually if you wanted to assign them some books, or they can choose their own books. The more they use it, the more personalised the recommendations will be. So it will give them books that are in the right ZPD, and you know, as they would in school, if you use Accelerated Reader, the books that are tailored to their reading level. We were really fortunate enough to be, it was bought for us as a school, and we were able to use that for reading at home because our children didn't have books at home, and they were able to do reading, and we could see that they were reading. Even if they didn't have books at home. We also used it for some asynchronous tasks. So you can set up projects, like this one was about the digestive system. You can also add in little tasks as well. So your whole lesson could be on this platform, and children found it very easy. We were a bit worried at first, I think, because this didn't feel as child friendly, but once they could log on and they'd save those passwords, they were able to find a real range of books, which appealed to everyone, boys and girls, whatever they fancied reading. So when you log on, it tells you books in your ZPD, and it shows you those recommendations.
Can I just interject on that? One thing I would say that I found really, really good about that is that we've used it for research tasks, which is really nice. And, you know, I know we've all been there where you've asked your children to research something and they go online and they either can't find anything because they're not sure how to look for it, or they just copy and paste everything off Google and don't really understand what they've taken. So it was quite a nice way for them to have topic books, so to speak, that were in their range that they could then go and look and find information from. So that I felt was really useful. Thanks. Sorry, I'm on mute again. How did we integrate these apps? So as we've said, we used Microsoft Teams, and I know that a lot of people here are using Teams as well. So most of them integrate really, really well, and you can either add them as a tab into your channel for either the lesson or the particular app, or you can just kind of embed it with a hyperlink into your class notebook, or you can share a code for them to join, and all of them work in that way, which we found has been really, really useful. The only one that hasn't worked that way is obviously MyOn, because that's just hosted as a web page. I think you can't even use QR code for that one, can you? No, they just need to save their login. All of the apps that we've looked at so far are compatible with Google Classroom, if anybody out there is using that. But as a trust, we use Microsoft Teams. It was quite easy to find, simple videos either on their websites or by going onto YouTube to find how to embed them if you weren't sure. We found that they're all really, really child friendly. And like we've said, you either use a code or send them a link, which really helped. And we found that by putting almost the code or the link everywhere, so sharing it on your screen as well as putting it in the chat and saying it repeatedly, that they would end up in the right place at some point.
So something that we really wanted to talk about was that the blended learning approach, because I think we've learned a lot from our experience of remote learning, but fingers crossed we won't be doing that anytime soon again. So we really wanted to think about, so we've learned all this from lockdown, but how are we going to build this into our classroom practice moving forwards to ensure that children don't lose those skills and to ensure that we are still using those apps that they've absolutely loved, but in a way that we can put into our teaching practice and it doesn't feel like we're completely reinventing the wheel or having to do things differently. So those skills that we really wanted to improve on were those typing skills, using the internet to research, being confident to search for things and know how to do that safely and properly, and being able to use Teams and OneNote to create a virtual record of their work, as I'm sure most people have used anyway, but moving forward, if that's how they're going to be recording their work for English or topic, and that's their perfect work, so how do we make sure that things are typed properly? How do we make sure that things are spelt right? And just keep going with those skills, so we've got children who are really fluent at using a real range of apps on the computer. So we feel that a blended learning approach is continuing to use those things, but also keeping that classroom practice that you'd already do, things in your books, and it doesn't everything have to be on the computer. And I know that that's something that, yes. So no, it's really hard to find that balance, I think,
after coming back from being on the computer all the time. Did you want to?
So I think it's just really important to think about how you can find a really good balance, because yes, children have spent a lot of time on screens, and it is really important that they have outdoor learning time and they are writing in their books, but I do think it's important to have a balance of both. We also wanted to just talk a bit about the adaptations for if children don't have an individual device. We, up until this term, we had one class set of iPads for the whole of Key Stage 2. So we really weren't being able to use a device often, but we are very fortunate now that our children do have devices. We have found that even things like Kahoot, doing them in groups, whilst we can, and making sure that children still social distancing and not all touching the screen at once, I think that you can make those adaptations to still include it in your lessons, or have a carousel of tasks so they all get to have a go. And we found as well that we can integrate this tech blended learning approach into a variety of lessons. It might seem, I found it a little bit harder for maths and English, because you feel quite, how you do that. We know how we plan maths, how we do maths in our books, and it's just making new ways of thinking about how you can use the tech to enhance their learning. With our foundation subjects, we found that's been the best point to jump in, because children can, answer Kahoots, and they can do maybe a quizzes as their formative assessment. It's been quite easy for us to just incorporate that in. I think group work, I think that still could work if you don't have the devices for children to all have one each. So moving forwards, we wanted to incorporate more asynchronous lessons into our timetable, and something that we've really tried to adopt and put into lessons were Hyperdox. So if you've not heard of these before, it is just a document that's got hyperlinks on, and it's to promote children to be moving through lessons at their own pace. and for them to be able to take a bit more ownership of their own learning. So I've put 2 examples on the side of Hyperdox that we've used. So the one on the left in the middle was right at the beginning of our journey in November, when we weren't too sure what would work, and we just wanted to start to introduce those things to our children. And as you can see, the links are highlighted in blue and underlined, so the children know exactly what to click on. And they've got tasks that they will progress through at their own pace, building on what they've learned. And then the one on the right is one from our remote learning quite recently, which is probably more the style that you would be using if you were in the classroom. So there is a video for them to watch, which has that input, and also some input from BBC Bitesize as well. And then you've got a do it, share it, and prove it sections. So then on the do it, they've got an assignment to complete. The share it, they'll have a go at a Kahoot quiz that's self-paced on their own. And then the prove it, we use Microsoft Forms a lot, because I found that's quite child friendly as well. And they were able to prove what they've learned in a more assessment way, and then we would get that data afterwards, which I think is really important. Children can move through these, and once we've found that using them a bit more, they know what the next task is. They know they need to complete that task to their best ability before they move on. And I think it saves you always having to be the one at the front telling them what to do next, because actually some children are very fluent on the computers and they will get through those tasks, and they will be able to move through those and achieve what they need to. Century is on there as well, and I think that's something that we haven't chosen to talk about today, but is an amazing piece of technology and application if you have got access to Century to use, and the way that it uses AI to plug those gaps and move children's learning on is amazing. So yeah, definitely Hyperdox. And if you Google Hyperdox, there are so many templates to use. All of these are from templates, none of them are from scratch. So there is a lot out there.
Okay, so the takeaways that we thought from our presentation today were really just have a go, even if it's starting with 1 app or 2 apps, and give them a try. If it doesn't work, try again another day. We've had instances where we've shared a Kahoot and then we've tried to open it and it didn't work. That happened to me this week. One of my Kahoots just wouldn't generate a code, but it's not the end of the world. The children are more resilient than you think, and they are so good at doing things that you just don't even realise, or as I found out from my own children at home, that they can do things that I didn't even know about, and then they're teaching me, which makes you feel ancient, but it's all good. And then our final point is that our whole lesson doesn't always need to be techie. So we do have lessons like English today has just all been online, but it doesn't have to be like that all the time, because obviously it's blended learning, so it's a mixture of both. And that's it really. So I don't know, is there any questions that anybody wanted to ask, or any apps they want us to clarify, or anything else? Just pop it in the chat or unmute.
If there isn't anything, we do have an evaluation form that we'd really appreciate it if you could fill it out. I will post a link to it now. Or wait if there are any questions.
Thank you. Glad it's been useful.
There.